Happy Sunday, everybody. And if you're here, then you are here. We are being joined by Sunday night regular Andrew. How you doing, Andrew?
Hello there. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. It is Happy New Year, by the way.
Oh, yes. Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's Catholic New Year today. Restarting the liturgical calendar, moving on to Gospel Cycle A for the Sunday Mass,
Yes.
Gospel of Matthew, and reading Cycle 1 for daily masses, which is only for people who go to daily masses. Uh,
Oh, there's different cycles.
Yeah, yeah. So for the daily masses, you get the same gospel during ordinary time, but the choice between s- there's two first reading and responsorial psalm cycles.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I went to a few daily masses where the priests read readings that were, I don't know, he read the readings and I thought, oh, I want to see what those were again. So I went and looked up the readings of the day and they were different. I'm like, does he
Yeah.
just pick whatever he wants or?
So when there's a saint, you have the option of substituting the saint's readings for the daily mass.
Oh, okay.
But
I
the
see.
pre-notanda for the lectionary says that the daily mass cycle is preferred and should only be done if you should only substitute the saints readings if there's a strong devotion to that particular saint among the people.
Well, this priest has a strong devotion to pretty much every saint out there, I guess.
One of those old school Polish pastors who puts a statue in every nook and cranny of the church.
Actually, yes. I don't know if he's Polish, but I wouldn't doubt it if he was. And
Yeah,
there are
well,
statues everywhere.
you go to those Polish churches, that's how they're decorated. Is how
Yeah,
many saints can we get in here? That's the big thing. Mark Lefebvre
yeah.
is asking about daily mass. Yes, it's at an average parish you might get a dozen to 30 people at daily mass, but it's something we do because you've got these priests and they need to have something to do. So we celebrate mass every day.
It's what they do when it's not Sunday, you know? Just
Yeah.
celebrate daily mass. What else would
Uh,
they do?
Yeah. Uh, I wonder if among the Orthodox, that's not more common just at monasteries having the Eucharist every day. So if anybody is Orthodox, come on and answer questions for me. But we have 4 viewers, so you really have to roll the dice and get lucky there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man,
So how was your Thanksgiving, Father?
Thanksgiving was wonderful.
Oh, good.
My parents hosted Thanksgiving, and we hi Chad had
Hello.
all of the fixings, 3 different kinds of pie. My brother came up from the Twin Cities, which wasn't expected. One of my brothers, but
Mm-hmm.
he's a musician and kind of plans things at the last minute. So he called my
Oh,
parents like 10 o'clock the night before and said, "Hey guys, I'm coming up." So that was delightful. Yeah, so it was a good Thanksgiving. How about
awesome.
you?
Oh yeah, it was nice. I went to mass in the morning and sang at the cathedral, and yeah, it was very nice. We're still eating leftovers, actually. I don't know about you.
Well, the leftovers are all at my parents' house. They
Ah,
didn't send any with me. Now I'm
oh
offended.
darn.
Is that a first?
I guess I could drive over there. It's only about a 10-minute drive, so if I really wanted
Oh,
some,
nice.
but I don't think the leftovers would last long with my old man around, so he's a big fan of the leftovers. How you doing, Chad?
Great. Can you hear me? Is this thing working?
Yep. Yep. You're coming in loud and clear.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, it's good. A buddy of mine just did our weekly detox meeting. That was good. Um, we had like five people in there that were interested, which is good because it happened right before the game starts. So that's good.
Packers are playing tonight?
Yeah, because usually when the game's on, nobody wants to. Everybody seems to be cured of their alcoholism, so that's cool.
Oh, nice.
Funny how that happens. Everybody seems to be instantly sanctified too, and no longer have to go to church.
Oh dear.
But yeah, it's good. I on my way, I actually called my pastor. So I wanted to, I'm in this church and I like the church. My wife and I like the church. We like being in the church community, but we feel like we're so adjacent. We don't really feel in it. Um, Part of that is uh, like the scheduling that they have with events and stuff is, they have like a women's meeting, but it meets during the week, at like 10 a.m. And so it's a lot of older people, like really old people who are interested in doing fellowship type stuff, um, but they're not working and stuff. So I called my pastor. I wanted to touch base with him, and I asked him, like, what does your daily uh, walk with God kind of look like? Like, can you give me like a picture? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, a lady told me. It's really simple. When you go to bed at night, say thank you, and when you wake up in the morning, say please help. Okay, yeah, I get it. But, like, is there something that you do that's disciplined? So he said that he used to be a lot more disciplined with stuff when he was in seminary and stuff like that. It's not as tight of a ship as it used to be because he has like 4 kids and a wife. I don't know. He mentioned Psalms 95 or something, reading that in the morning. I don't know. What do you suggest?
Um, yeah. So first off, there's no one correct way to do it. So my number one suggestion is, whatever you do, it needs to be something that won't burn you out in 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Um, number two suggestion is figure out what, yeah. So a lot of people over here at Catholic Land, they're big fans of the Rosary, and they make the
Okay.
Rosary happen. I usually pray a Rosary before going to bed. That's kind of my Rosary time. Helps calm the mind, slow it down, at least in theory. Sometimes my mind doesn't like being slowed down.
How
So
long does
yeah,
something like that take in, like, say, for a novice to step into?
be like 20
What's
minutes.
okay?
And the nice thing is you can find like probably thousands of videos of people praying the Rosary that you could pray along with. And probably find like Mark Wahlberg or Jim Gaffigan praying the Rosary because every Catholic celebrity has to have a Rosary tape.
Oh yeah, the guy who does The Chosen also does a rosary
Jonathan
there.
Rumi,
Jonathan Rumi on
yeah,
Hallow.
yeah. So anyway, so that's a nice thing is it's got that kind of low barrier of entry. Um, Another thing that I think is great is Lectio Divina on the Bible, and
You mentioned that. What
I
is that?
actually don't know what that is.
yeah. So it's basically a way of encountering, and I do it with the uh, the the Bible, but Mark Lefebvre and Manuel told me that I need to be doing it with any text, and I was a little bit hesitant to that. If you didn't catch a stream on Wednesday, that was something that happened. So basically, you take a small chunk of the Bible. I could always recommend the Gospels for this, and then you just read it slowly. You invoke the Holy Spirit, ask Him to guide you, read it slowly, see what stands out, appears relevant to that, and then you could do a process of just kind of turning it over in your mind. What does Jesus mean when He's saying this here? How is this significant? How does this impact my life? Um, so really, it shouldn't be that terribly complicated. It should flow naturally like a conversation. if it's going well. Sometimes prayer is dry. That's something you need to just be prepared for. Yeah, and the nice thing is that
Yeah,
I could always
I tried.
recommend.
I did that this morning.
Oh,
Well, there you go.
how did that go?
Sorry, I'm probably gonna robot right here, but I just what I like to do is open the Bible up to a random spot, and then I'll do that. Today I opened up to Jeremiah when Egypt is about to get clobbered. That was weird.
Is there anything that spoke to you there?
Yeah, yes. A lot of it is a lack of. I was looking at my lack of discipline actually, and maybe lack of humility and attention on things that are not very important.
Something St. Ignatius of Loyola always said before you do any prayer, you should take like kind of the first 30 seconds of any time of prayer to remind yourself that that your Father in heaven loves you, and yeah, just to mentally picture what the Father's love is. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think
Yeah, I
that's
don't
a
think
great
that
way.
God's out there. I don't think God's like waiting.
Oh no, Chad Drow. Stupid
Uh-oh.
internet. He'll be back. He's probably in the middle of something amazing right now.
Yeah, probably. Usually, when this happens, they'll end up hearing everything we're saying afterwards. So
Very, very quickly.
very quickly, yes.
Chad, are you back?
Hello?
Maybe. Can you hear me?
There you are.
Aha.
That's a no.
Now
Hey,
you can't hear
all
us.
right. No, I
Yeah,
don't
that's a
think
yes.
God's waiting to smack me.
Right, right. Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know. I
goodness.
just think it sets the prayer off on the right foot
Shit.
there. To
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I might
So
be back
anyway,
soon. Coming up.
those are kind of my two go-tos of ways that I pray. And
Mhm.
I put quite a bit of time into it because there's no point in being a priest unless you're going to go hardcore on the whole holiness thing. But whatever amount of time you can manage is where you should start. That's what I
Yeah,
think.
for sure. I mean, I'm no priest, but I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. I should be back. Am I?
Yeah, yeah. There you are.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. No, basically, all I'm saying is, whatever guilt and self-loathing that may arise, I don't think comes from God. So
Right,
yeah, I
right.
don't think He's gonna smack me up or anything like that. Waiting for me to drop the ball so He can smite me. I don't think that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's those the self-centered feelings are more of maybe that's something like you know being possessed by a spirit of self-loathing or something. It's not God. So, and I
Yeah.
wasn't feeling that either. Like I was trying to look at the book of Jeremiah. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I never knew it was in there. Right. This is what I like about kind of opening it at random. You know, I know it's kind of willy nilly, but I thought it was like, wow, I didn't even know this type of thing was in the book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. That whole political intrigue with Egypt. And Jeremiah's like, "Don't trust in Egypt. Trust in the Lord." And people didn't listen. Oh man, yeah. So
So, what do you got planned for this week, feller?
Well, I've got my Welcome to the Catholic Church classes called RCIA tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about liturgy. I
Awesome.
hope that can go well. Got some interesting meetings with folks, trying to get some situations figured out. Wednesday night, we've got the RE classes. I teach two sections of seventh grade religion. And then Thursday, I'm going over to the high school to do an open Q&A with the sophomores.
Cool. Is that a Catholic school?
Yeah, it's a Catholic high school.
Cool.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, got a question here, but Chad, Andrew, do you guys have anything interesting coming up this week?
This week. Oh, yes. Over this next week, I'm going to go to a practice for a Christmas concert, which will be. Oh no, that's next week. But I can't talk about next week. It's got to be this week, right? Well, I've got a first Saturday mass coming up that I'll sing at. And what else am I doing? Do I do anything besides singing? I guess I got a new architecture project to do. So that's
Ooh.
interesting.
Is that what you're studying?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
going to college now for architecture.
Very nice. You might be able to build a really nice church someday.
Oh, I hope so. That would be splendid. Yeah.
Yeah. What
And then I
about
hope
you,
it's
Chad?
actually nice.
Yeah. I think you'll be just fine. What about you, Chad? You got anything coming up?
I don't really know. Well, the course of the week, it's going to be another kind of. My wife and I are beginning this new project of seeing if we can really live up to a budget, and so that's going to be part of this week. Starting a new job site tomorrow. I was in Madison for like a month. Now I'll be in Milwaukee, so that'll be good. I have my writers group on Wednesday for our Peter Pan story, and then on Saturday I think there is a men's breakfast that I was invited to that I think I'm going to go to for our church. Other than that, no, I can't think of anything that's really, I'm really trying to settle into finding a rhythm in being average and really trying to find where that's going to be beautiful and somewhat comfortable. You know what I mean? It's I'm not describing that very well, but I'm 39 years old, and it's like, okay, now I have my family and I have a home, and I want to find things that I can engage in that are meaningful on a spiritual level, but also um, settling into growing up and becoming average and feeling really secure in that. So that's all kind of new for me, which is weird because I'm
Yeah.
almost 40.
Yeah. Well, some people never get there, so you're ahead of them. But yeah, it sounds like you're going to become a ordinary American guy.
I like it.
Yeah,
Good thing.
but it's honestly, it's like the world runs on that. The world runs on people quietly and faithfully doing the little bit that God has given them. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
keeps the world going round. We got a question here from Aaron. Hey, Father Eric, what do you think about talking with other Christians who may or may not believe what you believe, doctrines, lifestyles, or anything else? Well, I do that a lot. That's part of the reason why I like hanging out on places like the Bridges of Meaning Discord server and listening to this random Protestant pastor from Sacramento so much is, you know, but it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing, especially if you're not, but maybe it's not for everybody, right? So I go into a discussion with somebody I don't know, some Protestant and or some Orthodox fellow, and I pretty calm and confident in where I'm at, you know. And it's like sometimes there are challenges, sometimes there are things that'll get me a little bit off base, you know, and that's never fun to deal with. But I never really feel like I'm gonna change fundamentally. Like I'm gonna stop being Catholic, and I've got that confidence, which is nice, but it's not something that necessarily everybody, um, you know, young or not used to being Christian or only kind of modestly attached to a particular tradition. I think it's actually it might not be the best thing for everybody to go out into the open internet and be exploring everything. Because I
Yeah.
really feel like the only reason I've got as much inner peace is because I went through kind of a narrowing process. Uh, Dr. Peterson talked about this, might have been in his biblical lectures, can't remember. But like part of the work of your early 20s is you have to become something, right? Got to become a pipe fitter or an archaeologist or a journalist or something. And you've got to acquire those skills so you can have an identity and a place in the world. So me, that was seminary. Um, and I spent quite a lot of time and energy and effort into becoming a Catholic priest. And then once I got on the other side of that, and I had this foundation and this structure, then you know I had a place for these other ideas. And so they're extremely intelligent and very sincere with their faith, and it isn't all that terribly threatening to me. Um, So I've benefited immensely, I think, from listening to Pastor Paul, his take on things, seeing that I think no matter what Christian denomination you're in, good pastoring always comes down to, you know, reassuring people of God's love and His providence for them, um, and then yeah, you know, I could talk with somebody who's a little bit out there in terms of mainline Christian orthodoxy, somebody like Sam Adams, Transfigured Channel, and I could benefit from his insights because I feel like it's actually more likely to correct errors inside of me than it is to draw me into error. But that's only because I've got that foundation. So anyway,
Yeah.
it does depend a little bit, but so far I've been I've been loving it. It's one of those things that I have to be careful and exercise a little bit of self-control and discipline not to do it too much. So thanks for
Well,
the
Mhm.
that's one.
question, Aaron.
That's one thing I noticed about those I think who play nicest in this little space is they're characterized by exactly what you said there. They seem to be confident in where they're standing. Uh, there's an interest in fellowship. They don't feel like they're going to get knocked off the block. They're willing to have dead wood burned away, which is good. Um, but I think and like and they're not going to get like converted, and they're not looking to convert
Hmm.
necessarily. So it's
Hmm.
like it's kind of like in a way it's kind of like these little meetings and these little conversations we have are kind of like something like a fishing trip where you go out on a fishing trip with like 10 guys or whatever, maybe it's 5 guys, but you're not worried that the guy's going to like take your kids and your wife, you know what I mean, and that he's going to take your mortgage. We're just going to talk about life. And it's kind of like that. It's like men being men around each other, and there's a security in that. I really appreciate it. And
Hmm.
it's not a battleground. it's there's a security in it, and
Yeah.
I'm happy that you are Father Eric Seitz. I'm happy that that's who you are.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Just like I'm happy Pastor Paul is who he is, and I'm happy Jacob is who he is, and I don't want to change these men.
Yeah.
You know, that's the beauty of this.
And it seems like any religion worth its salt, any religion that can last a few centuries, that when you practice it sincerely and let's say advance in it, everybody comes to the same conclusion that God's really in charge and we're not.
Yeah.
Right.
I see that across the board, like any Protestant who's embodying Christ well, they'll say, "Yeah, God's really in charge and I'm not." And then any Catholic who's really embodying Christ well will say, "God's really in charge and I'm not." And you could get that same sort of spirit from Jews and Muslims.
Yep.
Yeah, and then
Just
once you've
not
got that
Jim
in your mind,
Jones.
yeah, right. So that's why I was talking about ancient wisdom, traditions, religions, something that's lasting, not yeah, not Jim Jones.
Yep.
Yeah, for Pete's
Yep.
sake. We'll
Yeah.
say recognized saints, not recognized psychopaths.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, I really love talking with you.
Oh
Right,
no.
right. Well, I appreciate you guys. God bless you. I love.
We love you
Oh,
too,
love you too,
Chad.
Chad.
Yeah, yeah, and
Uh,
yeah,
it's just
good
how
to
the
have him
internet is
around.
sometimes.
Yeah, as honest a man as we could ask for, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Why isn't he Catholic yet?
Well, because he's found a Lutheran church that he likes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You got any favorite Christmas movies, Andrew?
Movies. Oh, wow. I haven't watched a movie in a long time.
Wow. You're like
Uh,
monastic.
I guess, but I don't know. I don't have Netflix, and it's really where everybody gets their movies nowadays. Although I guess Amazon too. But yeah, no, it's not like a super difficult fast that I'm doing or anything. I just don't usually watch movies,
Yeah.
mostly because I just don't have access to them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in terms of Christmas movies, I mean, I'm starting to learn the piano now, so I started doing some of the Charlie Brown Christmas songs, like the little ice skating thing. Uh, I don't know what it's called, but playing the keys real fast all over the piano.
Fun. You
Yeah.
wanna play in church someday if you can get good enough?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
At at the Latin Mass I was doing while it was going on, uh, I was technically the cantor a few times, but since I can't play the organ, another guy came in and played the organ, but he didn't know how to do the mass. So it was kind of funny. Like I'm
Ye-
making sure the skola's all together and getting things right, and I'm like whispering in his ear, like, "Okay, start playing the organ now."
Mhm, mhm.
So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I figured, you know what, I should just learn how to play this thing so that I can just do this and read all the rubrics and everything. So, so the guy I'm singing with at the cathedral has gotten these uh, beginners piano books for me, and he's gonna teach me how to play it. So I'm learning.
Man, you got a lot of good stuff going on.
Yes, yes, I'm very grateful for all the crazy stuff that has been happening in the past year. Yeah,
Uh,
it's been quite something. I-
Julie Fennel says her favorite Christmas movie is It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh,
Solid,
that's a good one.
solid
Yeah,
choice.
I forgot about
solid
that.
choice. Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen that one as well. Yeah. What about
Yeah.
you, Father Eric?
You know, I've got a real soft spot for the Santa Claus.
The Santa Claus?
Yeah, with Tim Allen from like 1996.
Hold on, I gotta look this up.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I might have seen that.
Yeah,
Tim Allen.
yeah. Santa Claus spelled with an E, like a
Oh,
legal clause. It's a pun.
is that the one where they look at the claws with the big microscope and?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I know what that one is.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you imagine that the movie isn't actually about Santa Claus, it's like a giant allegory for something else, then it gets better. That's all I'll say about that. I thought about
I'll have to
actually like
think
I
about
charted
that
out
one.
a whole like I watched it like a couple years ago with my family, and I was like almost in tears because I had like charted out this whole way of talking about it, meaning crisis, and Scott Calvin is materialist man. And then it was all gone the next morning. It was just gone like
Yeah.
smoke.
Well, doesn't he turn into Santa Claus and
He does.
Like- gets fired?
Gets fired from his regular job.
You-
Yeah,
Why does he
because
get
he won't. He
fired
won't.
again? Was he too fat or something?
No. He was in a marketing firm, and they were gonna have this hyper commercialized Santa Claus put out. You know.
Oh, right.
And and he wasn't playing along with it. He's like, no, guys, listen, Santa Claus is like this. He's not going to ride in a tank.
Oh, yeah,
the
the
elves are
tank.
like, yeah, you know, and they're like, Scott, like you're, you know, it's and oh man, it's just like it's like a brilliant allegory for having tasted the things of the divine, and then you can't go back to the pleasures of the world innocently anymore.
Yeah.
It's like he's
yeah.
ruined for paganism at that point. Ah,
Oh, well.
yeah. If honestly, I might bring a notebook home for Christmas this year because we watched that one a fair bit. It's a family classic, so
Mhm.
I might just like take notes, you know, and then see how many clips of the movie I can put on YouTube before I get a copyright strike. So anyway, if you guys think Father Seitz' commentary on the Santa Claus with an E would be a worthwhile video, let me know because I've been thinking about it. But you
Ooh.
probably won't get it until after Christmas because before
Yeah.
Christmas is going to be busy. Renee says hi. I've been good. Been good. Got to see an old friend on Friday. Came up from South Dakota. Always good to catch up. Yeah. So
For
anyway,
sure.
and speaking of, I saw this this article on another website. Article about the father from the Christmas Story. Yeah, Christmas Story revisited. The old man isn't who I thought he was. I won't read it because that would be
Is it a
tedious.
copyright strike?
It wouldn't be. I don't think it'd be a copyright. Nobody's going to pay attention to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, in case you want to remember just how brilliant the script for that movie was, read that. Good little article. That is what was my previous question. Make a case for materialists to even entertain the divine, the non-material, to be part of the body. Yeah, what's the case for going to church? That's a big question right there. Because yeah, I mean, honestly, Mark Lefebvre has a wonderful YouTube channel called Navigating Patterns, and I especially appreciated his video on what is a church. Actually, I'm going to drop the link into the chat here
Mm-hmm.
because it was such a fantastic video. Oh, I think we both did it simultaneously, but it was held on my administrator account here. So go ahead and check that video out after you're done with this. Yeah. Yeah. So make a case for materialists to even entertain the divine, the non-material, to be part of the body. I mean, it depends on which materialist you're talking about, right? So kind of the big crack in my implicit and unwanted materialist framing in my life that happened when I was in seminary was music, because I loved music, and I still do love music, and it would do things in me, to me, and through me that couldn't be explained in a materialist frame. It's almost miraculous, it's like, oh, play these noises, and all of a sudden grumpy old Eric is crying, like, oh, why are the noises making you cry? Well, because they're beautiful. Crack that in there. So it really, I don't think, like, materialists come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and it's not, you gotta give them that individual approach. But I think the general approach is just to find something that is according to a materialist framing of the world, thinking everything's just a bunch of atoms and electrons. Find something that is miraculous according to that framing, and use that like a pressure washer to get the water in the hole somehow. Yeah. And that's why I'm all about building beautiful churches.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like, why is this church beautiful? Tell me, oh evolutionary biologist, why am I drawn to buildings that have a tall ceiling?
That's easy. Beauty doesn't actually exist. It's just, you were raised in a certain environment, so you're just attracted to that because of childhood, I guess.
Yeah, but listen, it like, there hasn't been I don't think there's been a culture that could raise somebody to deny the beauty of a great cathedral, right? It kind of overwhelms, but that's the thing about the beauty. So beauty, imagining that we're considering it as a transcendental, which is a disputed point, but we won't get into that. It's at least relatively transcendental in the materialist frame, so it'll be good enough. Don't worry about it if you didn't understand that.
Sounds good to me.
It bypasses the rational, thinky, talky part of people. It doesn't sit there and try and argue with them using logic and inductive reasoning. It just experiencing them. So you want the experience of music and something more without needing the music, opening you up to a world of wonder where beauty, truth, and goodness make sense. Yes. So
does that mean experiencing the beauty of music with something else that's not music, or just without music?
Not sure. Yeah. So I was bringing up music because that worked for me. That got me.
Well, architecture is very often compared to music, anyways.
Yeah. I mean, and as being kind of a non-propositionally articulated art form. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah.
That's something that I actually, I'll say something nice about the Anglican Church because they're usually a punching bag in the back of my head. But they've got that whole, just come here for Eventide, just come here for Eventide. There's no preaching. It's just, we've got our lovely English Gothic chapel. We've got the lovely choir, and you just come for the music and the liturgy There's no preaching. There's no dogma there, and it really, it was like the English. The English, they've got a certain advantage over the Americans, is they've got those centuries of history and culture to draw on without it making ethical demands on you. You could even see this with British actors, right? It's like if they're getting burnt out, if their career stalls, then they just find their way onto a Shakespeare stage. And if they're burnt out in their regular life, they can just go to Eventide, go to Vespers at their local parish and experience the beauty there. So anyway, oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hello there, Mark.
So you want to talk about church, huh?
No, I'm just trying to help you. I don't want to talk about churches. I don't know anything about church. What am I doing talking about it? No, but I think
I've got one comment I need to attend to immediately as soon as it comes up. Okay, I have to ask, why hasn't that white bag on your desk behind you moved in months? Don't you clean or clear your office product? So this space that I'm in right now, if everything goes well, in 2 months it won't exist anymore because they're building more office space behind me. So
there's no point in moving the white bag.
Like I don't have much incentive to clean my room because this space isn't. I haven't put up like anything besides a calendar on the walls here, even though I've got lots of lovely Catholic art that I could put up with. So it's very attentive. I'm going to go ahead and try Terpsichore Shore. I don't know. So anyway, I hadn't even noticed that life was like that. So
I didn't either.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mark, you're trying to help me. And I've got a feeling your help is going to be something like a chiropractor stretching me out and rearranging things.
Hey, the chiropractor solved a bunch of my health issues. So don't knock it until you get racked or whatever they're doing to you. It's all good. Yeah, I think I had a very long conversation with a friend of mine I don't get to talk to very much on. He popped out on Clubhouse. And we were going back and forth about a very contentious issue, which was the war in Ukraine. And one of the things he's really good at is saying, you got to bring this language down. Even though he can play with me, he can probably outclass me language-wise all day long because he's an ethics teacher, and he used to teach teenagers ethics.
Oofta.
Yeah, other countries teach ethics.
Catholic schools teach ethics.
What a novel idea, right? And we don't do that. I think that's really actually at the heart of the problem that I'm trying to point out, which is because again, I don't know why. I don't know why. I can tell no one's getting it. I just don't know why. The project is still Peterson did something that everyone else is trying to do and can't. However, and the churches in particular, right? They're all like, "Hey, this is our job. How come we can't do?" Like the biblical series is sort of like the clarion call, right? And I mean, the stuff before that for me is even more important, right? Because those are the people that are in, we'll say, real trouble. But like the biblical series is just the perfect evidence that you guys are not messaging well, or like you need a better marketing department, or however you want to think about it, right? And so how do you bring that language down to people, right? Because look, you can go on some wacky crusade like I'm on to make Final Cause great again, but that's like, this is not going to play well in the theaters, right? Like, this is not a movie anyone's going to go see. And this is sort of what I was getting at in the four-way that we did with Joey and Pastor Paul, right? Which is, I don't know why, and maybe not me personally, right? Because maybe I have an understanding, but people don't know why, in particular, they should care about spirituality as such, right? And therefore, why church is important. Because this is what I keep talking about: is they're really far away. Because first, you have to make the case for something like spirituality, And then you have to make the case for, well, if you want to have those spiritual sorts of experiences and you don't want to do drugs, for example, or drugs are unreliable to you, because they certainly are, then maybe you need a structure, and maybe the thing that provides that structure is something like going to church. And so I poorly worded my first question, which was not church as in the place, but church as in the body, we'll say, right? Like, why should I be involved in a spiritual structure as such, right? Whether that's physically going to the building or not is not like, let's get people interested first. Let's get them to the building second, right? And that's sort of what I it's a depth, it's a quality that's missing in the whole conversation. Is first you've got to get them interested in things that aren't material.
Right. Yeah. And that's why we're all paying attention to Dr. Peterson, is because he did that. And nobody else can.
Right.
At least
well,
not
that's
as well
that
as
third
I'd
way.
like to.
No, that's that third way that I keep trying to poke at Paul about. And maybe I'll just email him and say, all right, set up a time. Because he said he wanted to do the convo with me. And I think I'm almost able to do it. But yeah, I could probably just poke him and say, set up a time, give me a slot. We'll just hash this out right now. Because I think it's important, because I don't think people are really understanding. And I do, of course, have 2 videos on what Jordan Peterson did, right? And I don't think that's complete. Like, I think I could add a third and maybe a fourth to, sort of the things that I see that he did that other people don't seem to have noticed or don't highlight. And I don't think those are the only tools you can use. More importantly, like, I think he's missing a bunch of stuff. I would point at a bunch of people who don't hate, maybe that's too strong, who didn't resonate with Peterson at all, but totally resonated with Vervaeke, which is totally fascinating to me. I'm like, how is this possible? And I think it has something to do with the pragmatism, because Vervaeke is anti-pragmatic, actually, and Peterson is hyper-pragmatic, roughly speaking. If you wanted to find it a stark enough difference to care about, I think that would be the difference.
Yeah. But it's a tricky thing, and this is this is just a long-term project, long-term thinking for me is how to open people's eyes, right? And that's like frankly, that is a massive problem. We have huge amounts of money spent on this problem in the form of marketing and PR, right? Like, how do I get people to think the way I want them to think and buy what I want to buy, consider what I think is important to be important? And it's, it's like, and there's really cheap ways to do it, and we don't want to have anything to do with that, right? Like,
well, so that's a good question, because as we're talking about this, I'm sort of hashing it through my head. So one thing to think about is I could, because I don't believe the medium is the message. Like, I think that's actually wrong. As much as I like the rest of the work, that seems wrong. So if I think about something like TikTok, which I try to never do, but you have now forced me into it. What we're really doing is we're signaling to people through action what they should be emulating. And so if it's scantily clad women, dancing to, cheap music, roughly speaking, well, we'd call it cheap, low grade music, right? Because it's very drug like. It gives you a quick 3.5 minute hit or whatever, right? Of super excitement, and then it kind of goes away, and then you've got to like process that. And but you can always go back, right? So it's like the most dangerous form of drugs in some sense, right? Because it's using your own dopamine system and the whole 9 yards. And I think that's the problem, is that, again, and I said it before, like, on Holy Week, you tell me you're really busy. What are you doing and why? Right?
Worshiping God.
First, what are you doing? Well, yeah, but in the physical realm, we'll say, in the material realm, because nobody sees that. They don't understand that like, pastors don't just sit around a church waiting for drunks to knock and ask for $5. Like, right? Or priests just aren't there waiting for people to come in and take confession. Like, you know what I mean? Like nobody has that sense. And I do mean nobody. I'm like you said daily mass, and I was like, what? And now I'm like, because there's a couple of Catholic churches down the street here, and I'm like, I wonder if they have daily mass, because I have no idea, and I don't think they do. Like, I literally do not think that they do. And it would be interesting to find out. But I don't know. And it's like, well, why the hell don't I know that? Like, why isn't so I know more about the stupid Orthodox Church, which I've been to as many times as I've been to one of the Catholic churches down the street. I know more about that. Like they do Wednesdays, and they do Saturdays, and they do Sundays, right? And it's like, oh, okay. So I know right off the top of my head. And it's like, and that's on the other side of town. It's not even in Columbia. It's in West Columbia. It's way on the other side of town. Right? Across the river. It's on the bad side of the river. It's in the lowlands, for Christ's sake. You know? And that's the thing. Like why isn't that more visible? And you know, that's it's part of this lack of visibility, this recession. The church is receding. And by the church I mean the body, not just the physical buildings. Both are receding. And I think that's part of the issue is that's and part of the reason why they're receding is to avoid the TikTok crowd, right?
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, they got people from TikTok going to their church?
No, I think again, I think that basically the church is viewing, or we'll say the church structures are viewing these newer mediums as flawed in and of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is an aspect of you have to meet the people where they're at. But
Now,
also
there's these
the
sisters on
recession.
TikTok that do all sorts of stuff. But the thing is that the algorithm sorts all that material to people who are already into it.
Yeah.
Well, sure. But and that's the problem. Like I don't want that. I would rather see a bunch of Catholics working on a house
Feeding
or
the
something,
poor.
or for somebody, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what attracts people. Like, oh, they're doing something. Why are they doing something? Should I be doing that? I don't know, right? That's the conversation you need to have with people, right? Because if you listen closely to Peterson, that's what he does. It's like, why did people do this? Why were the guards cruel? Right? Why were the people who supported the communist regime in the gulags? Why when they got there did they not make it? Oh, well, they fell into one of two camps: the ones that repented, roughly speaking, and the ones that did not. Right? Like these little lessons are right there, but no one's out there with them and not represent. Like the thing about Peterson is he is a bridge. At one point, I remember Peugeot was saying, it's like you've got your one foot on one island and the other foot on the other island, and those islands are spreading apart, right? And it's like, right, but he is that bridge to some extent to because he's not even in the church. I think that's actually really important. Like, I don't think it works if you wear a collar and do it, right?
No, I think it does.
No,
Well,
because everybody just
been.
thinks that you're just trying to sell them something.
Well,
Right.
it depends
The
who you're talking
hermeneutics
to,
of
I guess.
suspicion. Well, because they put it in a political or economic frame. This is actually what my friend and I were talking about. I was like, yeah, if you try to put the war in Ukraine in an economic or a political frame, you're not gonna, you can't resolve it in those frames. It's not resolvable at all.
Now, Mark, did you see that video that Pastor Paul posted on Friday morning or Saturday morning with that pastor in Australia getting absolutely borked on television? Did you see that one?
Oh, yeah, that was Friday morning. Yeah,
Friday morning.
I did go.
Yeah.
I did go through that one. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
so
that was fascinating.
Yeah, right. Because the interviewer guy, and we can get shades of Jordan Peterson on Kathy Newman. He was embodying spirit for the for we'll say use big old scare quotes here, the elite media or elite opinions about these things, but this incredible suspicion of anybody who's not going to march according to the party line.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem
that was
saw with that.
brutal. It was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, well, he was doing a gotcha. And like, fair enough. Like, I get that all the time. Like, I get that recently on my channel, or was it on my channel? I forget where it was. I got that recently in a comment section somewhere. Yeah, it was on my channel, or on one of the videos I commented on or something. And these people, like, I knew the gotcha already. Like, these, they're so cute. They're so young. They're cute when they're young, right? Like, people have tried that trick with me so many times that the minute you start that trick, I already know where you're going to go, and I cut you off at the knees immediately because I already know these things. Like, I half these things I invented for Christ's sakes. Like, literally, like, there's a bunch of trolling techniques that I did first. Like, sorry, I was there first years ago when I was young. So there's a bunch of, well, yeah. You can set people up ahead of time by saying, it's like, if you want to catch somebody on free will, you set them up ahead of time by saying, well, are you saying that because you can't make a decision about X that you have no free will, right? Because then you have to either say, well, no, I have no free will, or I do, right? And I had already cut them off by saying, it's not like gravity is an issue of free will. Like, right? Nobody thinks that gravity has something to do with free will. They just don't link the two things together. But what that implies is that free will can't be this freewheeling, sort of thing. So what happens is, in the media, they try that trick, but the answer to that is to answer honestly. And that's what you didn't learn from Peterson, is just answer honestly.
Yeah, and I think the guy didn't do himself any favors by not saying, yep, that's what we believe. And glaring at the camera.
He should have said, I believe that he is in line with the same teachings as the church, and then he should have qualified that with, but I bet you don't understand what that is, because that's what I would have done. I would have shoved it right back in his face and said, I bet you don't know what that is.
That's not sticking to the talking points, though.
Well, that's the thing. If you stick to their frame, you lose. I mean, this is one of the things that Peterson talks about. You can't use their language against them. It's not going to work. You need to call them out when they have a bad move. And that's what I did with this guy. I right up front made the gravity argument, right? And then it said, of course I believe in free will, but he didn't hear the, of course I believe in free will, in that argument. Mm-hmm. And Laura, that's the problem.
We're talking about a Protestant pastor from Australia being interviewed on TV, and it just not being pretty. So anyway, but my point is that before we can, as a church person, as a collar wearing person, as a sacrifice offering person, I have to get through people's belief that they already understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
And it's really difficult, right? Because people have all sorts of low quality takes, and yet I've got to get through those first. And it's hard to do that in a mass media format. If I can sit down and have somebody speak honestly with me, which is already hard enough because people seem to want to tell me what I want to hear. But what I actually want to hear is what you're actually thinking. But it's just I don't know. It's a difficult problem, and as much help as you can get me solving it, cutting through the
yeah. Well, you just got to cut through the basic, being able to be vulnerable with somebody. That takes months sometimes to maybe years.
If you do it on a personal level. But again, I think the media hijacked people in this way, and you can hijack them back using something similar, right? Mm-hmm. Although not the same way. That's why I think the medium is the message language is dangerous, because then you're not on TikTok showing, a normal life or something, right? Showing mindful cleaning of your room, according to the Catholic doctrine or something, right? Or just the Christian ethos.
The virtue of orderliness.
The virtue of orderly, exactly. The virtue of orderliness for right. These things could be exemplified without mentioning the church, without mentioning the Bible, without mentioning Jesus, without right because and this is the conversation I had in the comment section on Father Mackenzie's YouTube channel. I was trying to explain to him, no, the thing you're not understanding is that nobody's taught Aristotle. You can't start you can't assume they have that base. They do not. They do not. I talk to people about Plato and Aristotle, and they are lost. They're, and they know just enough to nitpick and be dangerous, but they don't actually understand the message. Hey, Nick.
What do they not understand about Aristotle?
Anything.
They're not aware of him. Right. And so they know like, oh, he had something to do with logic, and they know he had 4 causes maybe, but they don't know what they are. Right. And that's the problem. And I have to disagree. You don't have to clean your room, Father Eric. You're fine. It'll get clean in a few months here.
Whether I like it or not. Yeah.
Well, so I've been absolutely fascinated with these new YouTube channels. Like, so there's one guy in Canada that goes and hunts for gold. He's got a bunch of gold claims, and it's all small stuff. I mean, I also watch Gold Rush, which is one of my favorite shows, and they get $1 million. Last week, $1 million or $987,000 in a week, right?
In gold.
In gold. Yeah. Oh, he's got a serious mining operation in the Yukon, right? But this guy's just out there, doing stuff by hand, by himself, sometimes with his friends. They'll get like 2 grams of gold, in 4 hours, right? But it's fascinating to watch, and I was like, yeah, that's interesting. And the other thing I've been watching recently is there are crazy people who fix old computers, which is something I wish I had the time and resources and energy to do, because I got a shed full of them. Like, I got a ton of them I could play with.
Yeah.
Right?
I follow a similar channel where he's putting together like old game systems back together with just like a few simple resistors, fuses, a soldering iron, and a microscope, and a work.
Yeah, exactly. And this guy's using oscilloscopes and talking about the memory and the different, right, and the Amiga 500 and the TRS-80 and, all these old 8-bit machines and some of the older gaming machines, and giving a little historical background, right? But they're doing things, right? And it's like watching the, the channels with lathes. You ever watch a channel with lathes? Like, lathe channels are like crack cocaine to males. They'll just watch something be built on a lathe all day long, right? It's like, ooh, mesmerizing. Women don't like it at all, right? But there's no draw like that, towards the more spiritual aspect of things, I think. And that's sort of maybe where the focus should be, is on, well, look at this thing we're doing that gives us joy, that generates joy in a way you can't get your, like you can ask me all day long, what do you like about watching lathe channels, Mark? And I'm like, I avoid them like the plague, because precisely for that reason, like, I don't know why I like this. This is kind of scary. I think I'll stay, I think I'll limit my time with it, right?
Yeah, the production of order out of chaos, something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So there's probably people doing this on social media, right? There's probably some order that just, religious order, or some priest or some regular old Catholic mom somewhere who's doing something quite like that. But our media landscape is so outrageously fragmented, because a fragmented society is actually easier to extract money out of, when you can get somebody hyper specialized. Yeah, I don't know. I think that
it's easier to deal with, because then this is the intimacy crisis, in my opinion, right? It's easier to deal with because now you can choose your own adventure, which means you can choose the things you want to conflict on and the things you don't want to conflict on. I mean, this is why the Ukraine war is going to go on forever, because they won't accept a loss. Like, you can't say, we just want Russia to leave and put everything back the way it was. Like, that's never going to happen. It's not possible, right? Because the longer the war goes on, the less of the old Ukraine is actually there. Like,
right. People
so
who don't want Russia. Yeah.
Right. Well, at some point, you have to say, we want to stop destroying what little we have left before we have nothing left, and then negotiate the rest so that we keep something. because otherwise you will lose everything. That is how war works, right? It's Russia's not going to lose everything. That's not possible. They have their own land. You're not invading them. That's not going to happen. But they can stay there long enough until you have nothing. That they can do.
Yeah.
And they probably will at this point for many, many reasons. Whatever you think of that, right?
Yeah.
But it's the acceptance of the fact that once a conflict like that begins, a war, there's always a loss. And every day you keep engaging in the war, there's a loss. And so at some point, wars don't end unless you negotiate. And everyone's like, we will never negotiate with Russia. I'm like, then you're just saying you're never going to stop the war no matter what. You're just going to kill more people and destroy more infrastructure. And I'm not a fan. Like, I feel bad because Ukraine's caught in a bigger thing, right? And it's the same with people. It's like, well, I can just pick which tribe I want to be part of, right? Which faction I want to hang out with. And then I can switch at any time because, I mean, I can switch my gender at any time, apparently. Like, you can switch whatever you want that's causing you a conflict. Right? You can just switch. You can just say, "Oh, I'm not in that anymore. That thing that was hurting me is gone because now I'm a woman, or now I'm non-binary, or now I'm identifying as black, or who knows what's up for grabs now. I don't know." But there's nothing showing people getting along together. And this is actually my buddy Yuri on Clubhouse. This is one of the things he wants to do. He wants to show, like Manuel and I get in these huge fights. They're huge fights, and we go at it, man. It's insults, and it can get very personal, right? And then we're fine because whatever we were fighting about is dumb.
You know how boys get, yeah.
I know, but worse, it's stupid intellectual garbage that means nothing. Like, it means nothing. It does not affect our ability to go out and have a sandwich together for lunch. Like, it's just not important, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, whether you think Aristotle's final cause is worthy of resurrection or not is really not that important to me being in fellowship with you.
Yeah.
As a human being. And so, we need some way to simultaneously reinvigorate that idea of, look at all these people who don't agree but get along anyway, and conflict is inevitable, and therefore you need conflict resolution skills, because that, I think, is where the church could say, hey, we specialize in conflict resolution. You think therapists are good, but we've got a whole set of tools they don't even have.
The first step is all of you have to admit everything you've done wrong. And if you say I haven't done anything wrong, then you make God into a liar.
People ask me what's wrong with the church, and I go, I don't know. I can't imagine. And then somebody like you says something like that.
No, come on. What was Jesus's first public proclamation? It's easy. He says, repent.
Ah, okay. If you say, you're talking about a book I haven't read, dude. Like,
yeah.
I went to Catholic school, and they didn't make me do that. I don't know what to tell you.
I will not take responsibility for dying institutions that I had nothing to do with. But I am sorry that your Catholic high school was lame. Our Catholic high school isn't.
Junior high,
public school.
Junior high and high school.
Bible either.
Did you go to Catholic school, Andrew, at all?
No, I went to public school.
And they didn't make you read Bible. Never taught the Bible.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's a hard problem. To expect that I'm going to solve it tonight isn't good. But you always make me think, Mark.
I wasn't expecting you to solve it tonight, but I did. Yeah. I did want you to think, because I think this is the larger conversation that we're having around this little corner. Is I seriously think people are not really understanding what they're doing.
Shh.
Oh yeah, right. Shh. Sorry, my bad.
Shh. We're not going to take the poor child and vivisect it here. Let it run and be free.
That's true.
Learn to play.
That's true. Yeah. But knowing what knowing what the goal of the projects are, right? Understanding that we're emulating something that we barely understand, but we're not admitting to that, which is that's the problem. Like, you're not really admitting to, oh, well, this guy came on and did what is by any reasonable standard a miracle. right? And opened up a conversation that had been previously getting shut down and shut down and shut down and shut down and, vanishing from the world, like a signal was going out of the world. And then he comes in like a freaking torch, right? And then lights a bonfire, and that bonfire keeps growing. And, we want to be part of that bonfire, and we don't know how best to do it in some sense.
Yeah.
So is this
But I know,
Jordan
Mark,
Peterson
that
we're
you're
talking about?
Jordan Peterson. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But I know, Mark, that you're a demanding man who sows where who reaps where he does not sow. So, yeah, that would be
Is that good or bad?
that'd be another reference that you would understand if you read the Bible.
Spoiler alert.
Is this Mark and Manuel fight with insults on pay-per-view? You could monetize that. You could.
I am considering that's Yuri's project. Yuri wants to have the similar sorts of arguments with me and also exemplify that, which is a project I've supported. I'm trying to get him actually on a StreamYard stream, so we might do that this week. Yeah, I think it's worth it to do it, to show people arguing and still getting along at the same time.
Yeah. Laura, you're gonna have to tell me about Saint Dominic's mother's dream. It's a piece of Catholic lore that I have not yet encountered. Believe it or not, there is so much Catholic lore that nobody can have it all. That's why you need the whole body together.
Yeah.
So hopefully Laura is going to drop us a link or a brief explanation. Saint Dominic, he was pretty serious dude.
Was he based?
I should think so. I think he would actually be the model on which all other basedness would be based.
I hope that's true for all the saints. It's just very funny. Like Adam from Ireland, there, he used to do based saint whatever, right, all the time, and it was just hysterical because it's sort of like all the saints are based by definition, pretty much.
She had a dream while she was pregnant that a dog grabbed a flaming torch and ran off with it and set the whole world on fire.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, the Dominicans, the Hounds of Christ.
Oh, that's Saint Dominic. He started the order.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And
See, I'm learning all kinds of things.
Oh man, the Dominicans in the eastern part of this country are absolutely kicking butt. You'd love some of the stuff they're doing, Mark. But it's mostly up in the DC area and at universities because they're a teaching order. But university students need God too. Common Man Homestead 2016, sincere and active participation in your community will bring people to church. Probably, yeah.
If people were seeing that, maybe. But I think the problem is that message. Look, if to the extent that the message is being put out, I never see it, and that's one of the problems. One of the stunning things to me. So, right, I come down from New England, and I buy this beautiful house down here with this nice, pond and 12 acres of land and this whole craziness, and a garden and all this nutty stuff, and. One of the real estate agents, because it was a husband and wife team, came with his pickup truck and helped me take away some garbage that was on the property. That, of course, he didn't have to do that. And we're driving to the dump, and he's showing me, here's how you get to the dump, right? Because I don't know anything about this place. This is a new place for me, right? I know a little bit more about Colombia, where my mother was living, because I was living there for a while. And I can't remember the exact phrase that he used, but I mean, it just absolutely like floored me. He basically, we were just talking about driving along, and I was thanking him for helping me and all that, and he said, look, I'm just a Christian. I'm just a Christian, struggling and failing to do what the Lord wants me to do, or something like that. Like, it was really humble, and I was just like completely set back by the whole thing, because look, we weren't talking about religion. Like, we just we were just kind of yapping about whatever, right? But like, that left an impression on me. And then there was a later incident where I took the airport travel van or whatever, from the from Columbia up to the airport, up to Charlotte, to fly up to grab one of my cars that was stuck up in New England. And so it's just a one-way trip, which is why I took the van. And I get in the van, and there's this woman there, and she starts talking about service. And the minute she used the word service, I went, she just used a word in a way I don't understand. And I was like, like, what's up with that? Like, I knew right away. I'm like, oh, you have a gap in what she's talking about versus the words that you are interpreting. And she learned service when she was 12 years old, and a hurricane hit the panhandle of Florida where she was living. So her parents had 2 rental properties plus their property. And they went and fixed all of the other properties with the community before they fixed their own house. And that's how she learned about service. And it was such a powerful story that I can tell you now, and probably until the day I die, that story, because I was just blown away by that whole thing. And there was, we'll say, less overt Jesus smuggling in that for sure, but like that's like, wow, why would anybody do that? That's insane, right? Because they don't have to fix the rental properties first. They should fix their own home first. Are you a good materialist who understands the efficiency and the utilitarianism and doing in the right order, right? You know what I mean? And then it's like, oh, but see, that kind of breaks you out. You're like, well, why would you act that way? All the models in my head, which are political and economic and egoic and whatever, say you would never do that. But here's somebody doing it.
It's an exemplification of goodness.
Exactly.
Right? It's another one of those transcendentals that does not tangle with the egoic intellect, with the thinky-talky part of us, but it just reaches straight in there and does stuff. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And that's what I was getting at earlier when I said that, the true, the good, and the beautiful, right? I'm going to invoke the transcendentals here because I think if you want to talk about the true, the good, and the beautiful, you have to throw out the logic, the reason, and the rationality. Goodbye. You have to. And then I think that's actually, for some people, that's the message. Like I do that message. It actually works. You have to be very careful who you can't do that to a general audience. Like they'll be lost. And there are small audiences where that message is extremely effective. Not that it works right away. They argue with you, and I can be logical about what's beautiful. I mean, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm going to wait here. Go ahead. Do it right now, right here. They can't do it. And then they start to realize, oh, I can't do it.
You can't. Oh my. Being logical about the beautiful. That sounds like
told that they
Vulcan love poetry.
Exactly. But they've been told that Vulcan love poetry exists because they literally have, right? They actually have. So they've been given this foreman for, well, the Vulcans have all the same stuff that we have. They're just logical. It's like, no, they don't. Then they don't have all the stuff that we have. And you can see that. Like there's Pon farr and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you sure? Because Pon farr doesn't sound very logical.
These are all Star Trek references, everybody. So if you're not up on Star Trek, go find another YouTube channel.
Well, but the point is, even their own systems that they think give them this idea that you can resolve everything in reality, we'll say, with logic, reason, and rationality, they don't work. They don't even have systems that do that.
Yeah, and that wasn't even what Star Trek was trying to say. Because you had to have Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in order to have a proper mission.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Spock, the logical, McCoy, the heart, and
the heart.
Kirk, the heroic principle that mediated between the two.
He's a too. He's a I don't know what that ship is. Let's shoot it down. And then it's like, Captain, logically, that would not be a good idea, and then McCoy's there like, for God's sakes, Jim, don't shoot them down. They might be kind, right? That whole thing is there. And if you don't know that Roddenberry was in 3 different plane crashes, then you don't really realize that, right? Or Nichelle Nichols.
Was he a test pilot?
No, he was a pilot though. He was,
okay.
Yeah, he was flying at least one of the planes. Yeah, okay. If I have my history correct. But also, Nichelle Nichols approached him one day. She used to tell this story all the time. I've heard it several times. I've heard her say it several times. She went right up to Roddenberry and said, "I know what you're doing. you're writing moral plays. Right. So if you don't know that Star Trek is moral plays, right? If you don't know that Star Wars is fundamentally, a moral heroic story, right? Advised on by Campbell, who didn't understand his own work very well. Then you don't really understand what's going on, and then
don't
you end up
understand what
making
makes a good story.
Right. And then you go on to make really bad remakes
Sequels,
of these
yeah.
stories, sequels, because you don't understand the components. You think you know what they are because you've divided them up. You've got it very logical and rational. Look, like everybody likes lightsaber battles, so as long as we have a lightsaber battle, everybody likes this character. So as long as it doesn't matter what we do with the character, as long as the character's there, right? And people are still screaming
Now,
about
put on a pair of sunglasses and say it in a Scottish accent.
Correct. Yes, exactly. But people are still upset about, wait a minute, you had Luke and Leia and Han Solo all together and didn't manage to get them, screen time together, really, right? To any great degree. Like, what were you thinking? Like, what is wrong? Like, why wouldn't, even under your stupid materialist system, why wouldn't that have occurred to you? And it doesn't, because they don't understand heart. They don't understand the brutish nature, which is important to deal with. And like, there's another area with the church. How do I deal with my brutish nature? Like, how do I deal with the fact that, sometimes I just want to punch somebody out as a solution to a problem, or scream at somebody as a solution to a problem. And yet I know that's not the best way, but I'm always fighting with myself, right? And most people don't even, like, I tell them, no, go stare at a wall for 20 minutes by yourself. Sit down and stare at a wall in a small room for 20 minutes. I bet you can't. They're like, I could too. And I'm like, go do it. And they can't. They know they can't too, right? But they don't want to admit it. And it's like, well, that's where the church could say, look, we can help you with that self-control problem. Like, there's stuff going on that you don't understand, but we have some insight into that. Maybe we don't understand it, but we at least can offer you some tells, some insight, some help, right?
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I just hate how loud everything is all the time.
I mean, yeah, but on the other hand, I don't know if I really want to stare at a wall for 20 minutes.
But you'd
You know
stare
what I
at an
mean?
icon or a crucifix or a monstrance for 20 minutes, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, for
Like,
sure.
can you?
Maybe an hour even.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but can you is the real question, because that's when people ask me what's the measure of a man, that's what I tell them. Your ability to stare at a blank wall for some amount of time is a really good measure of what kind of person you are, or whether or not you're really, say, a person worthy of being a person at some point. Like, and it, because
What is
people
it
can't do
about
it.
staring at a wall that makes you worthy of being a person?
Well, look, I mean, so I have this video on navigating patterns, which I put a link to earlier in the chat, right? Where I talk about the three frames. And so, it's easy to see, well, I have conflicts with nature because things in nature eat me or give me poison ivy, or, I can drown, right? There's storms, like you can get cold, you can die in cold, right? There's lightning could strike you. There's all kinds of ways nature, and that's obvious, right? And then, I have conflicts with other people, like pretty much me. I have conflicts with every other person I've ever been around, right? So, because I'm disagreeable, right? But that's easy to see. But the thing that people don't understand is the third frame. So there's you with nature, you with others, and you with yourself. And people don't realize you have inner conflicts all the time. And a lot of the modern work, for example, is really horrible because they talk about trauma
What
as
modern
if
work?
it's, yeah. Who's the guy? Gaber Mate. He's one of these trauma peddlers. Well, it's
Okay.
really your problem is trauma. It's like, no. That's not your stupid problem. Everybody gets
Some
trauma.
people, it could be their trauma.
It
No.
could be, yeah.
Trauma plays. Trauma is a universal the way he talks about it. So everybody has trauma. Like everybody's parents traumatize them because everybody's parents are imperfect. And growing up traumatizes you because you have a nice worldview and then you grow into a greater intellect. And now that worldview has to change. And that's painful. And like, and it, for me, I hope it's still happening, right? Like there's still this traumatic aspect to learning more stuff in the world or learning more stuff about the world or meeting more people in the world. We're not taking that into account. Like you have forces inside of you that are causing you not to act in the way that other parts of you want you to act. Like and
So-
people are not acknowledging that.
So how does that explain? Are you saying like there's a part of me that wants to stare at a blank wall?
Yes,
No, I'm
because
saying it-
Mark Lefebvre challenged you to do it, and I bet you can't, you little lady.
Oh,
There's
now I
that
really want.
No, but there's
Oh, jeez.
look, and it's not universal for everybody because everybody's struggles are not universal. Obviously, that's another thing the church could preach on, right? And
Oh,
talk
I
about.
I
But-
have never judged somebody for never judged somebody harshly for advice that you're not tempted to.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Because for me, I mean, there's lots of instances, and I used to look. I was careful when I was younger, and I'd like to think I used it judiciously. I used to backhand people, and it worked. Oddly enough, with the people I chose to backhand, but there were a couple people that I lived with, especially in the hippies. Uh, I was very clear with them. This will be the last day on earth if you do that. And I'm not even, and they knew I was not even remotely joking, especially not when I was younger, man. I would take you out like that. I knew karate. I was really fast. I was unbelievably fast, actually. And I had no compunction at all. I was like, your life is not worth anything to me. I'm so sorry. You will not steal from me because I will take you off this planet faster than you can say boo. I have no compunction at all, and they
Oh,
knew
my.
they knew that was my attitude. But that's something I struggle with because I'm quite capable of breaking people's bones and killing them on the spot. Like I learned a lot of stuff in karate, and it was not good stuff. It was all name and kill stuff. They did not teach me how to disable people. They did not teach me any of that, unfortunately. So I
You
had
got
to
to
be
go to
real
jujitsu school for that.
careful. Yeah, well, there's a better way to teach martial arts for sure. There's different ways. There's different,
Mhm.
and they just look. My early schools, they didn't teach that. They taught if you're going to get in a fight, you're going to win, and winning means disabling the other
Ender's
person.
Game,
And
Ender's Game stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and that's real, and like that's what makes Ender's Game good is that you can see that struggle within him. He struggles with the fact that I need to end the fight, and the way to end the fight is to take the other person out, either disable or kill them. And he understands that there is a line where that is true, and he's constantly struggling with that line. When do I step in? When do I be diplomatic about it? When is the diplomacy not working? Right? And so that's my struggles for sure, right? Because look, I mean, I've punched holes in walls, I've broken equipment all over the place. Like it is no joke. I mean, I don't do it very often, right? But I have done it because I had it's not an anger management problem. See, because what you mere mortals don't understand is anger is for the weak. Okay, I don't have any anger. I have rage. Okay, that's what I have. The rage may seem to you like anger, but you don't understand rage if you think I get angry. I don't even get angry. I get passionate about things, which is nice. But yeah, you won't see me actually anger, but 4 seconds before you take off from this mortal world. That's me. Like I'm very much trying to tame the monster 24/7. And other people have other struggles like that, but we all have struggles like that. Whether it's our sexual desire, right? Or like I have a general gluttony problem. You put food in front of me and I will eat all. Like I have a real problem because shopping once a week is very hard. Because if I have an amount of food in the house, I tend to think, well, I should make all of the spaghetti and eat it now, even though it's 4 meals worth. Like that I have a real
Well,
problem
you
with
can
things like
always save it for leftovers.
He doesn't.
right, but I don't want to because I'm gluttonous by nature. I'm like, and when I was young, it didn't matter because I could eat 4 meals worth of spaghetti in a single sitting, and it didn't bother me. Nowadays, I do that, and I'm going to be half on the floor for about 4 days. But we all have struggles like that, right? We all have struggles like that where we yell when we don't mean to, or we don't stick up for ourselves when we know we should, right? It goes both ways. We all have those struggles, and nobody is acknowledging that. Everyone's just pretending like they're all perfect little kids. And then when something goes wrong, they blame trauma, or they blame their parents, or they blame the system, or they blame capitalism, right? The mind control space dragon of capitalism, see navigating patterns for mind control space dragons of capitalism, right? Like they've got all these tricks where the thing they should be blaming is their own lack of self-control, right? And that's one of the things that Peterson points out rather brilliantly.
Yeah.
Well, where does the
It's
lack of self-control come from?
Adam and Eve.
Well,
Well,
lack of original sin, right? Lack
Yes.
of training, right? I mean, a lot of people turn to Stoicism for a reason. And look, I'm a Stoic. I'm a big fan of Stoicism, right? But Stoicism doesn't give you a why. But man, if you're in trouble, get Stoic first, right? And yeah, Laura made a good comment. Women blame men blame women, right? I mean, where do the incels come from? Who are they blaming? And what does Peterson tell them? He says, if it's all women, it's not women. It's not hard, right? There's some Aristotelian logic. What do people not know about Aristotle? They don't know Aristotelian logic. Like he didn't think it through at all, right?
Yeah,
This is the whole point. They're not self-aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's difficult because you have to do it yourself in order for it to be real. Like you got to get into the arena every day and say, all right, flesh, here we go again.
See, this gives me an idea, Father Eric. Maybe you can't or won't do this or whatever, and like fair enough. But can you imagine a YouTube channel where somebody actually every morning turned on their camera and said that into the camera, and then prayed for whatever strength for whatever thing they were working on in that moment, and they did it every freaking day? Like every actual day, because see, that's the power. There's Dan Bongino, right? He's on, he's one of the conservative podcaster guys, right?
Nope.
He's been posting on Twitter every freaking day. Today is blah 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 the date, and Joe Biden is the worst president in U.S. history. Every day he posts this. Every freaking day. And the power of that is amazing. Like, even if you disagree with him, you have to pay attention to it in some sense because he's doing it every day. And that's the thing. Like, that's it. Like, just doing it every day for like a year, and then 2 years, and then 3 years, talking about the struggles. Like one of the deep critiques of the Catholic Church, will say, is that they refuse to talk about the scandals. They refused, right? They don't just say, look, we did this and this was bad. One of the most impressive things that I saw was down here, I think it's St. John von Neumann or something church, I think is what it's called. I went there with my aunt and my uncle, obviously, one time when they were down here, and they invited me to church. And they were actually sending a letter to the Vatican to talk about that. And I was like, holy macaroni, this is a miracle. It's way too late because I'm from Boston. So like we knew about this before it was in the news. Everybody in Boston knew, because everybody in Boston was traumatized by that scandal. Mm-hmm. Literally, if you were in Massachusetts, you knew somebody who was directly or indirectly affected by that. Like it was a big problem. It was a big problem, right? So that, but the church doesn't talk about it, and that I think is an issue. Like they should talk about it. Like maybe the Pope should be showing himself every day, begging God for forgiveness for that scandal. Like that would go a long way towards helping.
Yeah. Literally repenting in sackcloth and ashes. Like literally, you take the nice, smooth cassock off and you put on the sackcloth and ashes, and you sit out in the rain for 24 hours reciting penitential psalms.
Whatever, right.
Yeah, maybe I should do that sometime. Do you ever,
Andrew, you're the perfect man for this job. Do everything that Mark says.
Oh gosh,
Oh,
no.
No,
I'll think about it.
no.
Ugh. Hey, Bill. I can't hear you. Sorry.
Good to see you, Bill, but we can't hear you.
You have to allow the microphone on the
Oh, there we go.
website.
Now he's not muted. Nope. Still can't hear you, Bill. No, it's gotta do with
Mouth the
something
words
else.
very slowly.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll try to. I
How
can't
about
lip
that?
read.
There
Yeah,
you
that
go.
There we
works.
go.
You can hear me well now?
Yep.
How y'all doing tonight?
Doing all right.
Doing well.
Good.
How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I heard Mark going on for a while about church. I couldn't help but to jump in.
Absolutely. What do you got on your? What do you want to say to this guy?
Well, first off, the local church near him would be one less seat dying if he actually went.
Which one? There's like 7,000 churches, dude. I'm in South Carolina. You know what it's like down here.
Oh yes, sir. I'm just a little bit north of it. Yeah, but whichever one's dying would have one less empty seat if you win every Sunday.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I usually head out to that silly Orthodox church since I know somebody there, and the father told me to come back. You need to come back, and I was like,
Yeah, but you know,
Sounds reasonable.
if people see you, especially if you're representing your church, wearing a shirt or whatever, if people see you in the community, volunteering at the football games, basketball games, buying shirts for the local rec teams, things like that, people get involved. I don't know. The most common thing I hear people talk about when they talk bad about Christians or Christianity is they call us hypocrites because they don't see the works. You have
Right.
to be in the forefront seeing the works. If you know, I mean, why is woke so popular right now? Right? Why is it so prevalent? Because it's in the forefront, right? If we're just sitting in our pews on Sunday and we're not actively out in the community feeding people when they're hungry, helping grandma fix her porch, you know, then we can't complain when the church ain't doing nothing, when it ain't going nowhere. But if you're looking to fill seats, and it ain't even have to be your church, right? If you're wanting a strong community, you know, you have to be in the community making it strong. People see that. Might take 2 years, 3 years, but if two people show up to the church just because they saw someone faithfully helping their fellow person, then that's a win. Even
Yeah,
if it
no,
takes 4 years to do it.
I don't disagree with you at all, Bill. Like I think that's also right. Right. But you have to know it's the church that's doing it, first off. And you also have to be able to reach the people that aren't in the community because we have people who aren't in community anymore. And we need to bring them back to community. And that's what Peterson does. Peterson says, I know you're stuck in your individualistic, solipsistic little ego world by yourself online because right, you're virtually not alone, as Grim Grizz would say, right? But you're not in your community where you live. And that's a problem. So we need to get you back into your community. And how do we do that? Well, first, clean your room. And then think about your community. Like, think about all the things you can engage with. Like, Peterson has a whole method behind this.
So are you part
Right.
of a community, Mark?
No, I look, I can't, there's a lot of stuff I can't do because I'm sick. So it's not, I can't just go out and start working on stuff because I'll
Hmm.
pass out basically. So no, I'm not. I mean, I moved down here because to some extent, I knew that was going to happen, right? Or I knew it was a possibility, and I needed a cheaper way to live. I couldn't keep up the pace I was keeping up in Massachusetts.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I'm reaching people online and sending them out into their communities, right? So if you think about Joey's original project, or who was talking about that, somebody else was talking about it too, right? Like that like we've had a lot of success with that on Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, because that was always our mission, was get these people offline. What do they do? We've got to get them going in their communities and engaging with the people around them. And we got them off the Vervaeke server, off of Discord, out of their stupid video game lands, and into the real world, because I think that's where the most urgent need is. Not that anything Bill's saying is not super important. That's also important. And I talked about that before. Like, if the Catholics are out helping people, I don't see it. And which isn't to say much, because I'm not super into the community because I can't be, but also some of the other churches are very visible compared to the Catholics, at least in this area. So if I'm not seeing it, there's nothing to there's nothing being exemplified there. So there's nothing to emulate.
Well, look, us Baptists got it figured out, man. We wear bright yellow shirts that say volunteer on them, okay, in our church, Anytime we're out, we make sure we're representing so people know where to go. Paul talked about what Peterson was doing a lot, and he kept conflating it to I can't remember the name, but a famous evangelist, right? But
Really great.
Jordan Peterson didn't have anybody, to step in and help. That's what Paul was doing, right? He was colonizing people's minds after Jordan Peterson blew open the door. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you're talking about doing as well. So, we have to learn how to capitalize on those moments, And so that's what you're doing right now. That's what Father Eric's doing.
Right.
A unified voice though is kind of needed, but there's so many different people out there. There's so many different ways of seeing things. I don't even agree with most of the things that goes on in my church, but I'm still there active because it's the best thing I got. And so
see, Bill, that's really important too. This is what we were talking about earlier, right? It's important to know that people don't agree, but they're willing to go along anyway. Like, people don't understand that because they think they have so many options in the world that if they don't agree with something, look, if I don't agree with my wife about this important thing, I can just get a divorce, right? If I don't agree about a religious issue with somebody, then I don't have to date them anymore, right? I don't have to work through the hard work of getting on the same page as them religiously. I can just say, you know what? You're a Baptist and I'm a Catholic, so I'm not going to date you anymore. Like, no, you want to work those things through, right? And we don't see anybody doing that either. And that's another signal that's kind of missing from the world.
I think I remember reading about J.R.R. Tolkien's life of courtship. He was a Catholic and he married a Protestant, and then he basically said, "Hey, you should become Catholic," and she did. So that's got sorted out pretty quick.
Right. And that's the thing. It can, right? But you have to go through the fire to get to the sorting out part. And part of this is just, well, we don't want to do any of the hard work. We don't want to accept a conflict. We just want to avoid all conflict and not deal with that. And that's part of the intimacy crisis. Like, there are conflicts that it's best to go through and have out with people so that you can make something bigger and better, at the end of the day. And there's no substitute for that. Like, you just have to walk through that fire, but we don't see that in the real world. And also the messaging matters. Like, who are you messaging and where? Because I can click off a Clubhouse room anytime I want when the conversation doesn't go my way, and then maybe go find a different Clubhouse room. But that's not the right answer, right? Because you're going to miss whatever you're going to miss. You don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then also you're missing whatever's going on in the other clubhouses too. So
Yeah.
Well, that's what people aren't acknowledging. This is like, you don't acknowledge that you're in a war inside your head with several factions. They also don't acknowledge that any choice you make is not a choice between two things. That doesn't exist. It's a choice of one thing over several other things. And when you don't have that mindset about the world, you get trapped in this, well, everything's just a choice between A and B. Nothing is ever a choice between A and B. That never happened to you, and it's never going to.
Yeah. The thing is I think something that Dr. Peterson did well is that he actually managed to paint a vision for people that made all of the conflict worth it.
Yes.
Right. And it's like,
Exactly.
this is worth sacrificing for. So just figuring out how to tell that story well. It's easy.
Yeah.
Once you can tell that story, people just do it to themselves. You don't have to work anymore.
Right, right. And he didn't invoke truth, goodness, or beauty, interestingly. And so that's worth thinking about. Like, well, how did he do it if he didn't invoke it? He didn't invoke those as end goals, we'll say.
Right, right. But he certainly used them.
Right, but he didn't say, you want to know truth in the world? You have to clean your room. Right? You want to know beauty in the world? You can make your own beauty. He didn't say that, which is fascinating to me. Like, I'm not claiming I have the answer to. Like I said, I could probably do 2 or 3 more videos on what did he do that I saw he did that other people don't seem to recognize. And that's one of those things that you're pointing out, is that he very much gave people a vision to break out of their easy answer of it's capitalism's fault, or it's the other political party's fault, or whose fault it is? It's my wife's fault. That's whose fault, or it's my husband's. Like he broke people out of that somehow.
We're all trying to figure out how he did it. So
Is
we
it
can have the
possible?
secret ourselves.
Yeah. But is it possible that you could still have the frame of somebody else wronged me, but there are things I can do to still better my situation, even if it is somebody else's fault?
Forgive one another, and you will be forgiven.
Yeah. Is that what Peterson did, or did he just make people realize maybe it's not all somebody else's fault?
I think
Maybe he did both.
one of the. Well, yeah, I mean, he did a little bit of both. I mean, one of the things he does is he very much says, yeah, it's that way. What are you going to do about it? Right. And the way he does that is by introducing the Pareto principle. Right. He says, look, there's this thing called the Pareto principle, the 90-10 rule, the 80-20 rule, whichever version you want. It doesn't really matter. Right. And he says that seems to govern everything in the universe at every scale. Right. All the way up to the distribution of stars in the universe. Are you really going to change that? Or are you going to accept that the poor will always be with us? Because there's the same statement. And he draws that line not as clearly as I did, right? But way better, for sure. Because my purpose is not to emulate Peterson in this conversation. Not that I think I could, because I probably couldn't make that point better than he can by any stretch. But the point is, he did say that. He basically justified the poor will always be with us by using the Pareto principle and saying that distribution mode is inherent in everything you see around you in the universe, everywhere.
And then also saying that resentment is destructive of everything through the Cain and Abel story. But he did it like he was putting it together with psychology and science and things he saw in his clinical practice. It was just a complete package, man.
But also, you notice he doesn't start with the Bible ever. He always starts with the Egyptian mythos or the Sumerian mythos, or like he never starts with the Bible, which I think is part of his magic. It's part of whether he realizes it or not. That's part of his enchantment for sure. And I think that's really like I was saying with Father Mackenzie. This is the conversation I was trying to have with him. You're starting with the Bible. You can't start with the Bible. There's no way. These people are too far away from acknowledging the Bible as a book of importance, much less a book of knowledge, much less a book of wisdom, which is, really what it is ultimately. And so you can't start there because you're too far down the track. They can't even see you at that point, and they won't look. And fair enough. And Peterson somehow gets them to look and then get closer and closer and closer. And then he says, by the way, in the Bible, there's Cain and Abel. Did you know that? And resentment is bad, by the way. It's like, what? Wait a minute. How the hell did he do that? Like, no. We were talking about the Egyptians and like the torn up gods gods and all this cool stuff. That's really cool. It's all Gnostic too, right? He's appealing to the inherent Gnosticism in the world, where people are like, ooh, new knowledge. Oh, there's nothing more interesting in the world than new knowledge, right? I mean, this doesn't work on me because none of the stuff he talks about is remotely new, right? From my perspective. But he has that way of drawing you in Gnostically, but taking you out through the symbology.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mark, whatever you're hoping to have happen in the Catholic Church is going to take a long time.
No, I talk about the body, and I most often not talking about the church or a church, and I'm more talking about the followers, right, that make up the body, which is not, to me, the administration and the craziness, and that's the other thing too, right? Is what Bill was saying earlier, right? You Christians all want to get together on what you have in common, right? Because and still have the conflict, but be together in the commonality. And I agree with Joey. Yeah, the Civ classes stopped short because they didn't go all the way back to Plato and Aristotle, which is what we were talking about earlier, right? That people don't have that grounding of the Western culture. And again, that's another Gnostic appeal by Peterson. He says, oh, they don't teach you about this interesting old knowledge from Plato and Aristotle, roughly speaking. And all the Western canon, look, there's Dante. He had some good stuff to say, right? And what else was good to say? Peterson, oh, look, there's this book, the Bible. There's some cool stories in there, right? He throws it all together quite nicely.
Yeah. Which is like modernism in reverse, right? One of the sneakiest things that Machiavelli did was treat Moses along with all of the other great lawmakers, right? He had his treatise on law, and they were all equal, Cicero and Moses, and I don't think they had Hammurabi's code.
Just lump him in there.
Yeah, but it was just, and nobody called him out on it because it was the early Renaissance.
It's useful framing. The problem is it's useful framing. And this is when people say postmoderns have a point. That's usually the point. It's the point of a 3-year-old, unfortunately, but they do have a point. But every 3-year-old has the same point, and that again is the problem. Yeah, they have a point, but it's not an important enough point. It's not a good enough point. It's not a sufficient enough point, which doesn't mean you can dismiss it, but it also doesn't mean it's at the top of the hierarchy of points, right?
Yeah.
Which is where you get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Father, what you were just talking about, was that a heavily Catholic area or heavily Protestant area when that was going on?
Machiavelli, he was Italian,
Yeah.
so but I think when he was writing, it was just before the Protestant Reformation went through.
Oh, okay.
I think it was
Is that
published
what-
in like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I think The Prince was published or like written in like 1715 or something, or 1517, 1515, there, somewhere around there.
All right, because one thing I was going to say, I've noticed. So I'm not affiliated with Catholicism at all. I have very little understanding or experience with it. But in the Protestant world, especially the Baptist world, the moment you start mentioning Moses, man, it's all that's all man-made junk. We don't need it, right? So if that was a Protestant time, I could understand why he would,
He was kind of the tip of the spear. He was like part of the tip of the spear on that thinking.
Yeah, and it does a great disservice to us, especially in the Protestant church, because there's so much concepts that cannot be understood without understanding Moses first, and I think it's a great detriment to our society as a whole.
Yeah, and is not having things that we regard as sacred working out well for our country, because the biggest religious processions in this country are the pride parades. They've got their whole month. That's I don't know. We've done that topic to death.
Well, I'll say this. It's something I find hilarious. All day long, every day, we're bombarded with secularism. Turn on the radio, turn on TV, you talk to somebody, go to the gas station. You're just bombarded with secular thought. The moment you even start to bring Jesus up, oh man, you've done something wrong. You're an evil person. Get away from it. It's like that's not meant for here. That's meant for church. No, I think that's the problem when we relegate this spiritual conversation to just church, right? Or just home. We have an issue, right? The teachings in the Bible are awesome, right? I was turned from a very, very bad person into a kind of okay person, after years of study and spiritual guidance, but a lot of people need spirit, just the spirit on them, right? They don't have to have the learning and understanding at first. That comes with time. Salvation is a lifelong pursuit. Don't happen overnight, right?
Mhm.
But relief, especially from spiritual matters, can happen, overnight, right? If you're going through a 10 worth of trouble and your spirit's lessened to where you got 8 out of 10 of trouble, that's a big difference to somebody who's in a struggle, and the fact that we limit our spiritualness to small corners of our lives I think is a detriment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. But then we've also got that admonition to not throw our pearls before swine, lest they devour them and turn and trample you. So you've got to have a certain finesse to know when to speak and when to be silent. Certain spiritual wisdom.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that comes from many years. Some people are blessed with it, but other people takes a long time to figure it out. I sure ain't figured out the right time yet.
Yeah.
I try. I don't stop. But I mean, everything's contextual. Because prison ministry is good. A lot of good comes out of prison ministry. But if you're not careful, you can get yourself in trouble.
Mhm.
But just like what I do with the foster care, right? There's some children that will just cause so much havoc in my house that I can't let them come in. But then there's other children that the havoc's worth it. The whirlwind of trouble that they bring is worth it as long as you can mitigate it from flowing over to the other children and causing them issues, or bringing so much turmoil into your own life to where you're no longer able to serve the mission. But sometimes you got to put yourself in some real uncomfortable places and dig through it, and sometimes you won't see anything good come from it, and then other times it's 10 years later, it's like, oh my, a lot of good come from that, but I was so wrapped up in it I couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's part of the problem is this idea of silence. It's not because I don't think that's accurate. I think it's maybe silent about the spiritual aspect or silent about Jesus, but never silent. Like I think that's a mistake. I think which is interesting because so ironic that I say this today. So this morning, we on the Vervaeke server, we had this one kid come on and he was doing really well. We turned him around in like 2 months, record time. He started a job. He got out. He got part of a band. He's really into music. And then, excuse me, a couple of weeks ago, he dropped some mushrooms. And since then, he's been completely off the rail. I'm like, oh, all that work, all gone in an instant, right? Because he did mushrooms and now he just can't think anymore. And people were, he was on today and he was, blah, 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 right? And I know not to feed that. right? And this is where we get into double trouble with the Christians. Oh, we just want to be nice to them. No, you can't actually. You want to be quiet then, because the more stuff you talk about with somebody who's had psychedelics in particular, but even just pot for some people, not for everybody, the more you talk about, the more connections they'll make in the world, and the thinner they spread their brain. And Sally Joe went afterwards and said, "Oh, I didn't know that." And I was like, "Yeah." And she said, because her friend, who was a vet, had that same problem. And she instinctively, because she has good intuition, stopped talking to him. And she's like, "I didn't know why I did it, but now what you say makes sense." I was so quiet on the server that somebody reached out to me and said, "Are you okay?" Because I wasn't saying anything because I didn't want to feed him. Right.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, if when I'm driving to the dump, right, in this guy's pickup truck, because he helped me put all the stuff in the pickup truck, and he's going to help me unload it and get me to the dump and show me where the dump is, which none of which he has to do. If he doesn't mention why he's doing this, not that I asked, right, it was just kind of tangent. It wasn't inappropriate or anything. It was right on target, but it didn't come up in a religious context. But if he hadn't done that, if the woman that I drove up to the airport with hadn't just mentioned, like, here's how I learned about service, like, then my life would be less rich, literally, and I wouldn't be able to have these conversations even. So silence isn't really appropriate. In the one case, he was explicit about, I try to embody Jesus and follow his teachings, as terrible as I am at it. In the other case, she didn't mention it at all.
Mhm.
But you could hear it, like it was there, like the frame was. It's like, well, why the hell would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. Like, materialism, what are you doing? Priorities, you got to lead first before you can help others, and all this other garbage nonsense that's obviously false, by the way, right? But people
I
fall for
don't
it
think so.
because it strokes their ego. So it's
Yeah.
not silence. And sometimes there's a time for total silence, but I think a lot of it is just there's a time not to mention Jesus and the Bible and the church and
Yeah.
your piety or whatever, but still exemplify. And Bazzini was talking about this. It's the temptation for you to be seen doing something right is different from the temptation for you to be seen doing God's work. And I think that's the difference, is that you have to make that differentiation. You can't make it all about you. You have to make it about the exemplification. Because if you're not living out the life that Jesus instructs you to live out as a Christian, then no one's going to see that. And if they don't see it, they won't want to do it too. And it's still right back to that.
Well, yeah,
Right,
you gotta
well-
live out what you say. Don't want to be a what is it called?
Hypocrite.
It's not heretic. Yeah, hypocrite.
Hypocrite. Well, but that's the thing. If they're calling you hypocrite, then what they're saying is, I don't see you doing the work of Jesus. So why do you keep talking about Jesus? Yeah, fair enough. Like, fair enough. But the answer to that is be seen being like Jesus. The answer isn't stop talking about Jesus. That makes no sense.
Sure. I mean, I could think of the whole throwing pearls before swine thing. There's a certain point where maybe you put a little bait out in the water, and you see that there's not going to be any bites. There's not going to be
Well, but-
anything good happening from it.
But you don't do it to fish, right? You sit out in the boat, right, and you have the net open in the boat, and you do what you do in the boat, and the fish jump in the net or not. Right? It's more like that. Which is not to say you don't sometimes go fishing and become fishers of men, but the rest of the time you should just be doing the good deeds and living out the Jesus thing, right?
Yeah.
The way you see fit, and not being shy about that. Because then you're living hidden. And if you're living hidden, you're not sending out the exemplification, the signal, the come and follow me, the I'm doing this sort of message that needs to be out there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I
that's
don't-
just all about earning people's trust before being able to tell them the good news, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's kind of what the point I was saying. Not as elegant as Mark, he He's a lot of thinky talky over there, right?
You're more elegant than I am, Bill. To give yourself some credit, we're just talking to different audiences, and fair enough.
I mean, look, it's as simple as I've had medical bills in the past, right? And when they called me wanting money, I had a $30,000 surgery with no insurance. That they wanted their money. Oh yeah, yeah. When they called me every month, I'm throwing them what little bit of peanuts I could, and every time it was a smile on my face, right? How are you doing? How's your kids? Is everything going well? I can't wait to talk to you next month for you to take my money. It's just little things like that. When at the grocery store, even if you're having a bad day, they might be having a worse day. And just a little smile and a thank you, even if it's not well received. People around you see it. And if you're in the same, I'm in a rural area, right? There's only 2 gas stations around here and 1 grocery store. So the same people see me every time I'm in there, and after a while they get to where they trust you, when we start organizing mission trips to do things, some of these people I've hardly said a word to, but they've just seen my demeanor. And the moment the flyers go up and we're seeking for materials or whatever, we're looking for volunteers. People that seen me for 2 years but never spoke to me is walking up and handing me a $20 bill. It's just because and I'm not saying I'm a righteous person. I'm not saying that at all, right? What I am saying is if you try to live out Jesus, people see it. You just can't keep it in your corner. You got to keep it out, even if you don't evangelize. And I'm not trying to say I'm a good guy or anything like that. I'm just trying to show from a little bit of example. I've learned that if you keep your examples to yourself, people can't see it, right?
Yes.
People don't know, right? So you kind of have to get out there. As much as it makes me cringe, every time I talk about it, I think about Jesus telling us to we'll if we do things for men to see, we'll reap our reward here, right? And I certainly got an ego too. I certainly don't want to do something where I get to pat myself on the back. So, but the more in secret you do, the more harm you do to the people around you, right? Even if you're doing it maybe even for your own salvation, so you think, right? If it's silent, it's not helping the people around you. And when you're, I have when I was in Florida a few weeks ago, I was with a real because I wasn't able to get enough volunteers to go. And so we went anyway, and just happened there was another church from our area that didn't have enough volunteers neither, and we were able to link up and have a full team. Well, those guys were so much better talking to people than I was about Jesus. And man, I saw some beautiful conversations during that time. Right now, I'm a tradesman, and none of those guys are. So I was able to lead and help them in the work we were doing, our hands-on work. But when it comes to the spiritual matters, man, these guys were rock stars, man, and they were just killing it, and really making some of these people that they're going through the worst time of their life, making them feel better and smile. It's weird. You see somebody, you can just see the devastation on their face, and then after a 5-minute conversation, they're smiling and laughing and got tears in their eyes. That's just something to see. And I don't have that gift. And I was very fortunate to see someone, to be with someone that has that.
Yeah, well, and I like what Joey said, right? There's a combination of talk and of action that needs to be maintained. And I think the problem with the modern conception of evangelization is that it is talky. And it needs to be more out there doing things, exemplification. And, again, there's a way of talking about why you're doing what you're doing without mentioning Jesus, without mentioning the Bible, without mentioning God, that is just as effective as actually mentioning those things. And again, I think that's the trick that Peterson plays to some extent that works, is that he's not overt about talking about those subjects. And yet he's able to draw people into those subjects in a way that they find it accessible. And that's not a way that anyone else is going after or pursuing.
There is some hidden work that has to go into it, though. I don't know, the time of prayer, the time of confession and repentance, time in worship. That
Yeah,
the
there's
house
always
isn't built
always
overnight.
stuff you're doing for yourself, by yourself, always. But that's a given. Like you don't even have to mention that, right? It'll take care of itself with people. Right. As long as you give them permission and you say, look, you can't see my whole life because there are things I do for myself by myself. But that's different from being a live hidden Christian, where you're like, I'm Christian, but I never talk about it. Right. Or I'm Christian and I'll talk about it if pressed, or I'll say, well, yeah, I'm a Christian. That's why I volunteer. Right. But if I don't see you on the street and you don't tell me about service, right, without mentioning Jesus or God or Bible or any of that stuff or any of the biblical stories, then maybe it's not accessible, right? From a thinky talky perspective, which again, to Joey's point, is also important. And so, you don't have to talk about the things you do, but you have to talk about the fact that, yeah, look, you need quiet time to yourself too. Like these are all lessons that the church should be teaching people, because again, you think a therapist is good, try going to a priest, right? They can give you so much more, right? Like, if you were going to market it, which I don't recommend, you could, but you're not taking that whole idea seriously, that, the people within the church, the body of the church, all the Christians, with all the things in common that they have in common, because they have a lot in common, aren't out there saying, we have a lot to offer. And this is how we're able to do the magic that we do. Because from a materialist perspective, every single believer who's an actual believer, and I'd have a hard time telling you one from the other, right, walks through walls. And they know it. They know it. They're scared of them. That's the other thing. You don't recognize how scared they are of that fact.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we're going over 2 hours. I don't have quite as much stamina as our friend Jacob does. So I really appreciate the conversation and always something to think about.
Me too.
Always something to think about when I'm trying to get to sleep on a Sunday night.
Well, thank you, Father Eric, for hosting these and for giving me the opportunity and the stage to try and help you. And it's great that Bill's here, because he can talk about this in a way that I unfortunately can't, right? And it's good to hear Andrew's perspectives and get everybody's questions, and Joey's feedback is always so invaluable. It's hard to imagine that he's so good at this. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really important, and I'm glad that you're doing it. And that's why I try to be available, at least to help with this project.
Yeah. I like some of the things that Jacob's come up with, and I'm like, I don't want to be sitting there guessing when the next live stream is. We'll just put these things into regular slots. So Sunday night,
I like that.
Sunday night, 7:30 Central. I'm going to try my best to be here.
Something to look forward to on Sundays.
That's right. You don't have that lonely, I don't know, this will be our parting comment, but that lonely Sunday night feeling when you didn't do as much as you wanted on the weekend. Trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
This goes viral within your community, Father Eric. We need more conversations like this.
Very good. Good night, gentlemen.
All right. Have a good night.